Hello and welcome to another episode of my HLTV Fantasy. Today we are looking at the IEM Katowice 2025 playoffs. I didn't make a video for the group stage because I was actually traveling, so I would have had to make a video on my phone or something to record anything. Instead, I posted my lineup on Twitter. Actually, I went with something a bit different to this earlier, and then I replied to that tweet with my updated lineup because I got cold feet on Vitality. I thought that they might do quite poorly. I think that lineup might have been slightly better in the end, but this lineup also did quite well, so I'm not too upset with that. Carrigan doing not great, but also not terrible for his price. Major and Jota just decent. Pretty expected results, I would say, in terms of points. Maybe I could have expected a bit more from Spirit. I thought they would beat Navi in that matchup, which Navi ended up winning. But top 10%, we take that definitely here. Yeah, and on to the next one. We're gonna be picking from this single elimination bracket. Of course, always fantasy-wise, it makes, to some extent, more sense to go for teams that start in the quarterfinals because they get extra points. The teams that are in the semis, so Vitality and Navi here, all of their players will get 6 points for the missing of quarterfinals, but usually you're gonna want more points than 6 points. Of course, if you expect, for example, Vitality to always make the grand final over Mongols or Eternal Fire, you might want to go for them. Or if you think Navi's got a better shot of beating Spirit, especially after they beat Spirit in their last game, that's also fair. And Navi have been looking very strong this event, which is, as a Navi fan, very nice to see. But also that Spirit game could have gone either way, so it's still a very close matchup between them. Some notable things: VP is playing the playoffs with MIR because the visa of Flamus ran out, and I think that's gonna really hamper them in this matchup that I already would have thought Spirit is always gonna win. I think Spirit is just an obvious pick in this bracket. I still have this problem where I can't click elsewhere. I think it's just the version of the browser that I'm using or something that's doing this. Maybe if I update the page. But I can't click on the matches apparently. VP Spirit, I think it's so clearly in Spirit's favor, and then Spirit Navi is like pretty 50-50. So Spirit just makes the most sense. They have the highest expected points. So yeah, I think Spirit just makes the most. And then Mongols Eternal Fire. I think Eternal Fire is favored there, even though we've also seen pretty good things from Mongols, but I think Eternal Fire, well, we can see here, they beat Falcons 2-0. They lost to VP, which is kind of interesting, but they beat 3D Max and they beat FaZe 2-0, which is a very close and very interesting match, actually. We can look at Mongols' route. They beat Liquid. They actually beat Gamer Legion as well, and then they lost to Navi. I would say this is an easier route. Like, for example, Eternal Fire had to beat FaZe Clan to make it here, whereas Mongols only had to beat Liquid and Gamer Legion. Nothing away from these teams, like Gamer Legion have looked pretty damn solid, but I still think Eternal Fire is looking a bit stronger than the Mongols. And then in the semis, I think it's again pretty 50-50 as long as Eternal Fire makes it through. Even if Mongols makes it through, I think it's a pretty 50-50 matchup in the semis against Vitality. I haven't been too impressed by Vitality. Like, yeah, they beat FaZe here in 3D Max and VP. Like, these are the kinds of teams that you should expect them to beat. I think the FaZe game is the one that you can be actually like kind of proud of as a Vitality player. But like VP, they should always beat, and 3D Max, they should always beat. Eternal Fire, Vitality would be pretty 50-50. So I think Spirit is an obvious pick, just because they get to farm VP, and then the matchup against Navi is going to be very close. So it could go either way. And then on the upper side, and also I think the winner of Spirit Navi is very favored to win the grand finals as well. And then on the upper side, I think I personally like Eternal Fire the most. But if you want to go for Vitality or the Mongols, I think that makes sense as well. I think Vitality more so than the Mongols, but if you have a feeling that Vitality is going to beat Eternal Fire or the Mongols in the semis, I think that's also a fair argument to make. But personally, for me, Eternal Fire seems like the best value option here. Especially also because even if Vitality wins against either of these teams in the quarterfinals, I think they're still going to struggle in the grand finals against Navi or Spirit. So that also is better for Eternal Fire in my eyes. So that makes it pretty simple to go for Eternal Fire Spirit for me. And then the fifth player is going to be a filler player, a cheap player in this kind of format. Preferably from Vitality or Navi, because they get the 6 points of padding. And then you can chicken out, for example, in the semis if you want. If you're going for like an Apex or Alexi B. But actually, when looking at the player prices, Alexi B and Apex are still pretty expensive here, like 190 for Alexi and 189 for Apex. But we have like way cheaper options, such as MIR now, or 175. And you have to make this decision because if you, for example, chicken out on MIR in quarterfinals, he's not going to get 6 padding points, but he's also going to get more negative points from the missed rounds here. So he'd end up on like -6 points, I believe. Whereas if you chicken out on one of these two players, Apex or Alexi B, you're going to get 6, and then they're not going to get -3 from here. So it would be a actually 3-pointer for Navi or Vitality's IGL if they happen to lose in the semis. So essentially you are paying around 15k for the option of getting, how much is it then? Almost 10 points. Is it worth it? That depends on your team composition, I think, mostly. When looking at players that I want from the better teams, I think Major for 180 is very good value. I think Wycadia for 196 is also a very decent option. Like, I actually think everyone on Eternal Fire is super fairly priced. And it just depends on your team composition who you should go for. But I can't ignore Xantares at 215. This just seems like an insanely good value pick for me. And if at all possible, I would like to go for Xantares. He is still the spearhead of this team. He's the best player on this team. We should expect to top the charts for them in any game they win. So yeah, for 215, I think it's kind of a no-brainer. And most likely, you're gonna want to pair him with Major, who is very fairly priced. We've seen him be able to put up some numbers against even better teams. And of course, like if you have the money, Vycadia or Jota, for example, are also very good options, but it's probably not going to be possible because you want to go for some of the better players on Spirit. Shiro for 217, very decent option. You could go Donk 235, of course. You can always go Donk. And I think Chopper has been looking very decent, so I don't even feel like I want to invest the extra around 15k for a Magix or even 20k for Zontix. Personally, I just think Chopper has been looking very solid, and he's also the most picked player in the event, which makes him a pretty kind of easy pick. Like, I'm probably, like, if you're listening to what I'm saying, this kind of lineup is essentially what I'm looking at as my primary lineup. It's actually floating 6k, which is crazy amount float in my eyes. Like, I usually don't want to have this much available. But there's no clear upgrades to me. Like, there's no player for 181 apart from Major, who we already have in our team. I think you have to make pretty big sacrifices, like not going, for example, for Xantares. You'd have to downgrade him to someone else. Like, even Voxic isn't enough. You'd have to go for like Jota or Wycadia to upgrade. And even then, you're floating money here. Like, if you go for Jota, there's no great options. Like, all of the VP options are the same. You just want the cheapest one. I think Techno is not quite worth it because I expect them to lose first match. So to me, this lineup just seems like the most obvious one. I think the only thing you could say really is that if you want to go for Shiro instead of Donk, I have 199k, and now we can like this is why it's very awkward. Like there's no around 200k player here who you'd actually want. The filler options are filler for a reason in this kind of format. I think the only way you don't want like a chicken player is if you don't go for Eternal Fire. So if you want to go for like Vitality instead, I think Messi probably is one of the players you'd be looking at then. Maybe Rops for this price. And now we can maybe look at Eternal Fire's Major, and he can actually play against the Mongols, and then you can chicken him out against Vitality if you believe that Vitality is favored in that matchup. So that's an option if you want to go for Vitality instead of Eternal Fire, but personally, I just like this lineup with Donk and Xantares, and then MIR as a chicken booster, and he's just going to end up on -6 points in the end, and that's going to be fine. We're just gambling on these high hitters doing quite well. I guess it's like MIR, Chopper, Donk, Ares, Major. Yep, I'm pretty happy with this. Just makes sense. I don't know when I would have last floated 6k. But it just makes sense in this case. Roll doesn't matter here. I suppose we go noob. And then we can go chicken booster already here against Spirit. This has really changed the game for these lineups. Like I feel like this is the most impactful booster in the whole game in terms of like team compositions that you can make, especially in single elimination brackets. Then it becomes a matter of what we put where. Probably eco-friendly here rather than here. 134. It's actually pretty close between those two. We can have so many good ones here. What about the support? I think support is like the secondary role for these two IGLs here. He's got way higher support round percentage numbers. So it's this. And then eco-friendly on Chopper. And then Donk and Xantares can just have whatever they want, pretty much 37. I think entry on Xantares is actually the best roll from a previous stage. Yeah, it's just the best roll. He had 100% trigger rate on entry fragger, at least for 2 points. That's crazy. I would assume multi-fragger on Donk is the best one. I'll just make sure. Yeah, it is the best. And I mean, these are crazy rolls actually to have. Really nice roll distribution, I would say. Just works out well. This is like the most picked lineup almost. I think it just goes to show that this lineup is just makes a lot of sense, honestly. Like these are all picks that make sense in this scenario. As I think like I wouldn't go Navi, even though I think Navi has a very decent shot of winning this tournament. I think from the fantasy standpoint, it just makes more sense to gamble on Spirit. Interesting that Chiro actually makes it here, but he's decently priced. Like he's actually pretty cheap. So I'm not that surprised that he's also heavily picked instead of Donk. We don't get to use all our boosters. So I just want to use a really good booster, like the best booster for any individual player here. So like Donk probably top of scorecard, right? I would say so. Xantares assist. I mean, assist booster is just so over. Like it's so great. It's just a really high trigger rate booster. That makes sense. You just want to have all of the best boosters early on here. What's Chopper's best booster? Apart from that, I think we can go bait here. It's against VP. It feels wrong, but I think it's correct here. Zantares, Donk 64% quad. Yeah, this is the problem, right? He's got such high, like they both have such high percentages here. Assist, I think major assist might be the play here, and then works Antares. It's probably gotta be like, probably not carry. It might be actually Avenger. I think it's Avenger in this case. Okay. I really like this line. I think it's, on paper it should be the strongest lineup like available. The riskiest factors here are like Eternal Fire is not proven as a like stadium team. We know that they might not be the greatest in like stadium environments, but still I personally think that they're more worth it than the Mongols or Vitality. And Spirit is just a proven team. We know what Donk is all about. They have the potential of farming VP, and then Mir just for the chicken booster. Yeah, I'm happy with this lineup. Sticking with it. If you enjoy this kind of content, please remember to leave a like and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.